are talking Tulsa King, which stars Sylvester Stallone as a kind of a mob character. Now this is season 1. As far as I know, it has been reviewed for a season 2, so you can expect kind of more from this. And when I first heard about this, I thought it's just going to be one of those kind of geezer teaser type things where we have a recognisable aging kind of star that will be in a few scenes, but ultimately it won't really be about them. But it isn't. Sylvester Stallone is front and centre in this particular kind of series as the kind of the main character, Dwight, who is a mobster who has just been released from prison after doing 25 years in the joint for this kind of like mob family. And you know, he kind of comes out expecting to have some type of reward, and he's a New York based kind of gangster, and he's ultimately kind of shipped off to Tulsa to be forgotten about, to be honest. But he ends up kind of making friends, making acquaintances, and kind of setting up his own kind of crime network there, which both kind of ends up becoming a problem for his original kind of crime family, Mafia family back in New York, but also it creates enemies in Tulsa, particularly this kind of like this motorcycle gang who has been doing the majority of like drug-based crime in this area, along with of course the authorities. And along the way we meet various kind of characters and you know, acquaintances that Dwight, Stallone's character, will meet and interact with. So what do we think of this 9-episode season 1? So the real strength of this show to me was some excellent character work. You know, I have some problems with Stallone's character himself, but we'll come on to that. But what I will say is the supporting... I like Stallone's character, don't get me wrong. I like Stallone's character. I thought he was good in this. And I liked his character. A little bit too much, which is why we'll come on to that. But the supporting cast here, I think, is very strong. You know, we get to know, like, all of his kind of acquaintances, his kind of acquaintances / friends, very well, I have to say, including their kind of own trials and tribulations, their own struggles, their own relationships with their family and things like this. And it really kind of makes you root for this kind of motley crew of wannabe criminals that Dwight has kind of gathered together to almost make his own kind of mob family. But it's not like the typical, you know, gangsters that we kind of seen certainly at the beginning of the series, and obviously in most kind of mob movies and things like that. One of the interesting things I liked about this series as well, and I don't know how realistic this is necessarily, but for a, you know, an entertainment as a show, I kind of quite enjoyed it. It basically is showing you the different ways of management, the different ways of getting people to do what you want. And, you know, we see the juxtaposition between, for example, the gangsters in New York and how they tend to use kind of fear, intimidation and things like this. But with Dwight's kind of like essentially the head of his family, he tries to gain people's trust and gets them to buy into his vision and come along with him rather than kind of, you know, essentially doing it out of fear or just out of, you know, money and things like that. So it's essentially an exploration really of how and why this group of people who have no business really kind of like being together as a kind of a crime family work together. And, you know, we've got this kind of this random taxi driver that ends up kind of being his kind of second in command. There's kind of this bar owner. We've got this kind of this kind of like weed shop kind of employees. All end up kind of coming together. And I thought it was quite a good like view of how to kind of manage people. You know, as someone who's worked in management, I kind of quite, you know, I quite like that. And it's like, again, I don't know how realistic this is for a kind of a crime family necessarily, but for a piece of entertainment, I kind of quite enjoyed it. And I have to say as well, this is a very well filmed series. You know, it actually feels quite cinematic. And had this be condensed to a kind of a you know, a movie, you know, obviously it wouldn't be this long, but, you know, you could condense it down and you would think it was filmed in it, because it feels that kind of, that cinematic. We have some decent action sequences between our two kind of like rivals and things like that. And the production value here just kind of feels all pretty good, and I have to say. And it's also nice to see a kind of a drama like this set in like somewhere like Tulsa compared to New York, because it obviously offers different type of settings and kind of like the local kind of flavour that, you know, having a series like this set in a place like that would offer you. So that I kind of quite like. So Stallone himself as well, in regards to kind of the acting, again, I thought everyone here did a good job. And Stallone is a very likeable leading man. Which leads me to maybe what I think doesn't work. Now, this is speculation on my part, but I'll be honest with you, I think that Stallone has insisted that his character be very, very virtuous and pretty much perfect in every way. Now, obviously, he's a criminal that's gone to prison, so I don't mean necessarily like that, but we learn that, you know, he went to kind of prison for an act of mercy. He seems to stand up to racists, to sexists. He seems to treat everyone kind of with respect and things like this. And he just like, he just seems to be, outside of the fact that he's obviously a criminal, everyone who he kind of comes across, more or less, unless it's a clear antagonist like this kind of biker gang, you know, he seems to be the ultimate good guy / bad guy, if that makes sense. And I just thought, I don't know, you know, it really kind of makes this character seem a little bit kind of unrealistic when he doesn't really have much in the way of character flaws. He, you know, it's ultimately circumstance which has kind of led him to be put in prison necessarily, which is the kind of the impetus of the kind of where the series kind of starts off from. And yeah, he has some problems with his family being kind of estranged, but that's ultimately because this thing happened to him rather than, you know, him doing something to deserve it ultimately. So I think that the issue here, for me at least, with Stallone's character is he's kind of written to be this super kind of like good guy that's got caught up in this kind of this world and this situation, but still maintains that kind of level of virtuous kind of type character. And I just don't know if it seems almost like a Gary Sue is the best way I would describe it. It seems a little bit too kind of like, this almost feels like Stallone didn't want to have any negative traits in his character. That's kind of the impression I got. He didn't seem particularly realistic. Every kind of person he kind of comes across, he ends up kind of being standing up for them in some way. And I like the positive aspect of the show, but it kind of seems a little bit far-fetched, to be honest. Which leads me to my second issue, which is also to do with the writing. And this movie, or this show series, is incredibly reliant on coincidence and things just happening to, happen, crossing paths with people in a certain way, people being agreeable to things more or less kind of straight away. I mean, the crew that this kind of Stallone gets never really seem to kind of question anything. They just kind of go along with whatever he says. It just kind of seems to happen pretty much in the story's favour to kind of like get from point A to point B. Every time it seems very, very convenient. So this certainly isn't a realistic show. It is a fun show. You know, it's an enjoyable character piece. I like the characters, I like the acting, and I like the story. But it's certainly, I have to say, you can't really look at this and think this is a realistic kind of mob drama, because it really doesn't feel like that. It just feels a little bit too sweet and kind of, the best way I can type it, where a show where a bunch of people get killed. But it feels a little bit too kind of like, I don't know, just a little bit silly in a way, a little bit kind of too like, just things happen because the story needs it to and it wants to go in a certain direction. Oh, he meets this girl, she happens to be an ATF kind of like agent who's kind of quite high up and then blah-de-blah, and it's very, very convenient. Now, I can still enjoy a show like that, and I did enjoy this particular kind of show, but but it kind of, I maybe would have liked to have it a little bit more down in the dirt, a little bit more kind of like realism. I think would have made this show a little bit more dramatic and a little bit more gritty at times, whilst it feels quite light, really. But I will give this show, or this season I should say, this season 1, a 7 out of 10, because I did enjoy it. Enjoyment factor is a lot here. I think the writing wasn't great, but I think the enjoyment that I got from the show, watching it, I was looking forward to it every week, and I enjoyed it. So that gives it a pretty good score in my opinion, 7 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.